There are dozens of reasons people go on pilgrimage: to seek meaning in their lives, to deepen their relationship with their belief system, or in the hope of achieving personal transformation. But I strongly believe that it's far older than this, but because we've got no written evidence, there's no proof of this. But I mean, if you look at ancient cultures such as the Sami in the Arctic Circle who follow their reindeers, they've been doing this for many thousands of years. I think the key to when you do a pilgrimage is to find the place you want to go to first, before you set off. Otherwise you could end up anywhere. People who generally go on pilgrimage are called pilgrimage at certain times in their life. Just make sure it's right for you and you're happy with what you're doing. It will come to you if it's meant to be.
Hello and welcome to Pagan Portal Podcast, produced by Moonbooks Publishing and presented by me, Rachel Patterson. Today I am very pleased to welcome fellow author Thea Prothero. Thea, welcome. Hello.
Hello, it's very nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Very welcome. Well, we've got lots to talk about. In fact, we could be going on a pilgrimage. I know, bad dad joke. I apologise for that. So let's start off, if we can, by learning a little bit about you. What do you do? What's your spiritual pathway?
Well, as you probably know, I live in the south of the UK. I enjoy walking, in case you didn't guess, especially in remote and wild places. I find a deep spiritual connection in places that are untouched or relatively untouched by humans. I like wild swimming. I read a lot, try to stay abreast of current literature. My favourite genre is folk horror, ghost stories, and I'm a huge fan of M.L. James. So that's, I work in education, and I'm a heathen. So although I acknowledge other gods and have followed other spiritual pathways in the past, they've always led me back to heathenry and it fits me the best. So that's why I am.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to pick up on something there. Wild swimming. Tell us about wild swimming.
Oh, well, I like to swim in cold water. So last year I swam in the Arctic Sea, obviously with a wetsuit.
Wow.
I just enjoy the cold water. I think it helps me reset my mind in a way. And it's just kind of a bit of a challenge, especially if you go for a long walk and you're hot, jump in the water at the end. Why not?
Well, I can think of lots of reasons why I wouldn't, but I'm not that brave.
It helps you connect with
Oceans,
nature.
Rivers.
And all of them.
That makes sense.
Obviously, at the moment, there's issues with sewage and things in wild places, so you have to be slightly more careful. I used to be a bit more carefree with it, but now I always check and make sure the place is safe to swim before I would even consider doing it. But, it's a way of connecting.
I'm probably not going to do it because I'm not that brave, but I love the idea of it.
We'll start with the sea in the summer.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't live too far from the sea. So, yeah, maybe that's where I should start. Paddling. So how and when did your spiritual journey begin?
I think it began when I was a child. When I was very young, I didn't really spend a lot of time inside. So most of the time I was in woods. I was in on the road doing things like that. I was out getting covered in mud, swimming in water, just being a kid, really. And when I went to school, which was enclosed in a building, I found it really difficult, especially being taught by rote. And I found that I couldn't really connect to that. So I prefer to connect outside to the divine or to the spirit of the place and everything. And as a teenager, when I lived in a house, obviously, I found the world quite difficult, and I found walking in nature to be inspirational. And spending time outside, especially alone, helped me immensely. And I can remember from when I was very little, I used to like going and beach combing, picking up little shells and things and placing them in little places that people wouldn't find. And in a way, thinking about it as an adult, I think that I was probably making little nature altars outside.
Lovely. We still do that now. Yeah, I love a bit of beach combing. Yeah. I spend the entire time looking down at the ground.
I mean, when I go away anywhere, I always take something from this place with me. It might be a stone or a shell or something. And I like sometimes to place it where I walk as a kind of a marker or a sign of respect for the place I go, which I think builds a connection to places.
Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah, that's a nice idea. I think for most of us, connection to nature is the key, isn't it? It is the base of everything. It's an escape. It's a sanctuary. It's comfort. It's all of those things, isn't it? Yeah. Now, one thing I would like to ask you about, on your profile, you describe yourself as, and I'm going to try and pronounce this, Nemophilist?
Yeah, Nemophilist.
Nemophilist. Fabulous word.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
It means a haunter of woods, which is, I really like the meaning of it. Someone who inhabits a woodland area. I mean, sometimes I don't physically inhabit it, but I think usually in my head, I'm always in the woods. So I like the idea that I'm so connected to the woods and the forests that one day I'll end up as a ghost haunting a forest. That would be great.
It's good to have a goal. I love it. That's a brilliant word. It's a brilliant description too, isn't it? I love it. So let's talk about your new book, Guide to Pilgrimage. What was the inspiration behind it?
I think the main inspiration, I have to say, was my pilgrimage to Iona, which is, in case your listeners don't know, it's a little tiny island off the west coast of Scotland, which has been a place of pilgrimage since about the 6th century, mainly for Christians. I remember when, from a teenager, I used to dream about a place, an island with sapphire seas and loads of greenery and green stones. And I remember the houses, kind of grey brick houses, which I didn't know what it was. I just assumed I was having a strange dream, but the dream reoccurred through my life. And then I saw a TV programme, about 15 years ago, which had Iona in it. And as soon as I saw it, I knew that was the place that I needed to go. So that was the main inspiration behind the book. But also when I was on pilgrimage to Iona, I realised that there's actually no guidebooks or no resources for people who follow alternative spiritual paths, or maybe who are agnostic or even atheists. And also, there's not a lot of information for people who don't want to follow a more traditional method of getting to the pilgrimage place, particularly modern people who might not have months or years to go on pilgrimage. So, they need to have more practical information, which I wanted to provide for people. I think it's really important because pilgrimage is an important thing.
Yeah, we can't all take, I'm just going off on a pilgrimage for 6 months. I'll see you later, can we? It doesn't work like that these days.
I mean, my pilgrimage to Iona took me about a week. Mainly I got there through public transport, which probably sounds a lot more comfortable than walking all the way from down here up there, but it's not an easy place to get to. It involves loads of ferries, loads of buses, loads of trains, loads of planes just to get to Iona. I think it was a worthy effort to get there.
So I guess pilgrimage, really, what does that mean to you? What does the word mean?
Well, I was wondering if I could read a tiny extract from my book, which kind of answers that question. Would that be all right?
Go for it.
I've got it right here. This is in the introduction, and it is, so what is a pilgrimage? Simply put, a pilgrimage is a journey to a specific destination. This destination is usually somewhere of meaning, such as a place of spiritual or religious significance, or a site associated with an important event or meaningful event, or it could be important to the pilgrim themselves. There are dozens of reasons people go on pilgrimage: to seek meaning in their lives, to deepen their relationship with their belief system, or in the hope of achieving personal transformation. It may simply be a step away from their everyday lives to spend time in nature, or even just to get fitter. I mean, most pilgrimages are linear. That is to say, they start at one place and they end at a different place, and involve a journey over a number of days or weeks or months, depending how the journey is travelled and what the goal of the pilgrimage is. Often, the journey is through a landscape or culture or a country that is unknown to the pilgrim, adding to the experience of separation from everyday life. So hopefully that's answered the question about what a pilgrimage is.
Yeah. Summed it up totally. It's got to be a very personal thing then, hasn't it? I mean, I know there are obvious perhaps places like Stonehenge, Glastonbury, Athens, Rome, some of the more spiritual, religious type places. But I guess it's very personal, isn't it? It could be a pilgrimage to anywhere that interests you. Doesn't have to have a religious connection.
No, it doesn't have to at all. If it's significant to the pilgrim, then that is the most important thing. I mean, for example, I've been discussing with one of my sisters about taking my dad's, who passed away a couple of years ago, his ashes up to the Up Eliar festival in Shetland, which is something he always wanted to go to. So although it's a significant event, it's personal to us because our father wanted to go there. So that's one thing we've been discussing, which would be a kind of pilgrimage to do that. So pilgrimage can be done as a memorial in a way to people,
right?
Or for any reason that's significant.
Very personal and each person will have a different idea about it and different places they want to reach, I guess, as well. That was going to be one of my questions. What makes a place worthy of a pilgrimage? But it could be anywhere, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it could be, it's completely up to the person who wants to do the pilgrimage, which place they choose and why it's significant to them. There's no right or wrong place to go on a pilgrimage. It's the effect of the pilgrimage on the pilgrim that's the most important aspect of pilgrimage, which sounds a bit of a mouthful, but
I guess really we think perhaps pilgrimage must be a religious thing, but it could be to a grave site of one of your heroes, or if you're into sport, it could even be a pilgrimage to, I guess, a football stadium or somewhere like that. I'm not going on that type of pilgrimage, but it's got to be what works for you.
Yeah, I know one of my friends at work, he goes to Glastonbury every year, Glastonbury Festival every year, and that, to him, that gives him massive amount of spiritual enlightenment. It makes him happy. It rebalances his life. So, in a way, that's his pilgrimage to do that every year.
Glastonbury does have a way of calling people, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
I know. I think it is. We do perhaps tie it in with religion, but it's not necessarily. Now, I guess as well, we think of pilgrimage as quite an ancient idea. It has a historical context. How far back does the idea of going on a pilgrimage go?
Well, written records go back approximately about 3,000 years, back to the ancient Greeks. But I strongly believe that it's far older than this, but because we've got no written evidence, there's no proof of this. But I mean, if you look at ancient cultures such as the Sami in the Arctic Circle who follow their reindeers, they've been doing this for many thousands of years. And I know for a fact they stop at significant places along their routes to fulfill their spiritual path. And also you've got the Aboriginals in Australia and the songlines, which are their oral tradition, their oral singing tradition of finding places in the landscape. I mean, that is many, many thousand years old. And although it's not called a pilgrimage, it kind of fits in the mould of a pilgrimage, I think. So I think it's been with us forever. Who's to say our Mesolithic ancestors didn't go on pilgrimages places just because we don't have any record of it?
Bane of my life is our ancestors not writing things down.
Well, yeah.
From a research point of view.
Either that or they wrote it down on wood and it got banned, which is the bane of my life.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, it does make sense though, doesn't it? I mean, it is, particularly where you mentioned them following the reindeer, a lot of ancient man would have just followed the food, basically. Let's be honest, they were following the food. So it makes sense that they would stop at certain places to, I guess, make offerings as well. Might have been for food and nice weather, and because that's what they needed to survive, didn't they? So that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a place, for example, like Blickmead, which is near Stonehenge, they often find the rocks that have changed colour in the water. I mean, there's evidence that people have been camping and spending time there since the Mesolithic times. So they must have gone there for a reason before Stonehenge was built. It's always been a significant landscape, I think.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
We do need a TARDIS or a time machine or something,
definitely.
don't we? That would be... I think we'd blow history out of the water if we actually went back and looked at it properly.
Oh, it'd be amazing, wouldn't that? Mind you,
Oh, yeah.
We'd have to learn the languages though, wouldn't we? Unless we had the TARDIS, which translated it all for us. So
yeah, TARDIS, Babelfish, something. Yeah, we definitely need translators.
Yeah, or Duolingo or someone.
It would be fascinating. To find really as well what drove people to go on pilgrimages, why they felt the need. Why do we feel the need these days as well, I guess? Escape, sanctuary from modern life is probably one of the reasons. But ancient men didn't have that. So I wonder what drove them to go on pilgrimages. So I guess as well for me, when I think pilgrimage, I do think of knights and, on crusades.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sailing ships full of explorers. But obviously we don't have those today in modern times.
Probably just as well, really.
Probably yeah, probably just as well. Unless you are in Glastonbury, I'm fairly sure I've seen knights in full armour in Glastonbury.
Maybe not the sailing ship, but...
Although I do live by the ocean, we do have some fairly old ships down here, but people don't tend to take them out on pilgrimages these days. So if you fit pilgrimage into a modern day scenario, it still works, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really relevant today, especially if you're spiritual. And I believe it can be the key to your spiritual enlightenment or your development. And if you're just pilgrim conscious, curious, without an intention, then you might well find one when you go on pilgrimage. I think we're really lucky that it's so much easier in one way to go on pilgrimage today than it was in the Middle Ages, for example. Today we've got cars, we've got public transport, and we've got the ability to contact people in an emergency, which obviously in the Middle Ages, a few people didn't come back. Yeah. And today it's a way of disconnecting from all the tech that we've got and everything that's around us all the time, bombarding us with things, and which is a healer of stress, I think, to disconnect from that. And it helps with mental health, and it brings all your problems into perspective. And walking, if that's how you want to do it, is a great way to keep fit, and it's great scenery along the way. So what's not to like?
I love that term, pilgrimage curious. I can't say it.
Pilgrim curious.
Pilgrimage curious. Pilgrimage is a really bad word to try and say several times. Pilgrimage curious.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a good phrase. Yeah, we need to take that one on board.
Yeah, definitely.
I would imagine a lot of people do go on these treks, these adventures, without even thinking of it as a pilgrimage, though.
In my book, I wrote a whole a whole part of the book in tools on pilgrimages that were literary pilgrimages that weren't actually called pilgrimages, but really they could have been. For example, Robert Louis Stevenson went to the Kelvan Mountains with a donkey after he broke up with his girlfriend to recover. The aspect of the fact that he was changed when he came back would suggest that it was a kind of pilgrimage, not in the same way as a religious pilgrimage, but a way of him coming to terms with what had happened to him and moving on with his life.
Do you think transformation is quite a key point to a pilgrimage?
Yeah, definitely.
That you come back
changed it,
thinking differently.
Yeah, or just change, like even in the way you think about things, or maybe you might become more resolute on what you want to do, for example, in your life, or it can change you in multiple ways.
Yeah, I love it. I love the idea of it. It is perhaps a romantic word. It does make you think of adventures and mysteries and tales. Definitely. I'm off on a pilgrimage. Where are you going? Just to the supermarket, but I'm going on a pilgrimage. Sounds far more exciting. Yeah. I think it's a word we should use more often, definitely. Are there perhaps specific reasons that we would undertake a pilgrimage? We mentioned transformation. Is it to escape? Are we seeking something when we look to take a pilgrimage?
I think usually someone who goes on a serious pilgrimage, for example, the Camino de Santiago, which is the long route between France and Spain, which is one of the most popular pilgrimages in the world, you wouldn't take that path, which can take you a month to complete. You wouldn't do that lightly, would you? You'd want something at the end of it, even if it's just to succeed in doing that. It may change the way you see things afterwards. Because you've achieved that, you may have, for example, more confidence in what you do. It may change your mind about what you want to do with your life. And it's very profound what a pilgrimage can do to you.
Yeah, to undertake something that's that long and that much, that's a commitment, isn't it?
Definitely. You'd have to change all your lifestyle in a way to do it. Which, I mean, people I know who've done it, I mean, it's very well marked, and you've got a lot of places you can stop. They're well established, and people who help you along the way. So it's not like you're left to your own devices as you would have been in the Middle Ages. But even so, you disconnected from your life, aren't you? So you can focus on what's important to you, which is the main reason, for doing a pilgrimage.
That sounds amazing, to just switch off all of the tech stuff and escape. Sounds like a very good reason to do a pilgrimage. I think we all need it, don't we? Like you say, we are bombarded every second of the day in life. To just unplug and disappear for a short while sounds good. Do you need, I guess that brings us to, do you need to plan a pilgrimage? Do you need specific structure, tools, or do you just get in the car and go?
I think the key to when you do a pilgrimage is to find the place you want to go to first before you set off. Otherwise, you could end up anywhere. In
the middle of a city or something. It's possibly not the same.
I don't know anyone who's done a spontaneous pilgrimage. If there is anybody listening and you have, please let me know. I'd love to hear.
Yeah, let us know. Yeah. And how well it worked out.
Yeah, definitely.
Or are you still there?
If it worked,
wandering
brilliant.
Somewhere?
The key to it is research. And these days you do need to plan, because if you're going in other ways other than walking, or even if you're walking, you need to know where you're going. So you need to look at maps, you need to study timetables of ferries, you need to think about your accommodation, and especially you need to think about the place you're going and what you're hoping to achieve when you get there, or how you want to be changed. Whether that actually happens or it changes you in a different way is, that's for the pilgrimage. But so you do need to plan. You need to plan to go. You need to plan what you're going to do and how you're going to get there. You need to have backup plans. I don't know if that's just me, but you need to have several backup plans. And you need to
be prepared. Best to be prepared.
Absolutely. And you need to, because you might be planning on catching a specific bus to get to a certain point, and the buses don't come. You need to have another alternative way of getting there, for example. And you need to make sure you plan, and then you go, you come back. That's the most important bits.
To coming back, yeah. Yeah, don't get lost in the wilderness.
Well, yeah.
In modern times, we always have the mobile phones with us, which from a safety point of view is a good idea. Do you think it's important to take lots of pictures or journal, perhaps? Is that part of it?
Yeah, I mean, I always carry my journal with me wherever I go. Well, sometimes I don't take it to work, but I mean, I carry it if I'm going out somewhere, because I like to make notes as I go along, note down my experiences, or I might even just want to de-stress and complain in my journal about how badly things have gone. It's a brilliant tool.
It's a good release.
Yeah. Definitely. Sometimes it's good just to get it all out there and write it down on paper and then carry on with your journey. And also I pick things up, like I might pick leaves up or feathers up, and I tuck them in my journal as kind of a memento of the journey, really. Sometimes I draw things, I paint things, I take photos as well. Like usually on a pilgrimage, depends who I'm with, but I might use an actual camera rather than my phone. But I mean, I do take my phone, but I always try and keep it turned off when I'm walking in nature, or if I'm on a pilgrimage, as much as possible. Obviously, sometimes you might need to look up a timetable or something if you're going to catch a ferry, or you need to check in on your plane, so you'd need your phone for that. So, I always do my best not to use technology, but to use physical things, because even the act of writing is kind of meditative, I think, or it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good way to capture being in the moment as well, isn't it? When you're writing things down, what you're thinking while you're there, sort of snapshots of how it's emotions, isn't it? Feelings and emotions you can record.
It's good. It's a good way when you return as well. You can reflect on your journey and think, oh yes, I felt that at that particular time, or this struck me. And then it brings back the memory of it, and it may help you to finish your pilgrimage, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I am a bit rubbish at journaling, but from that point of view, yeah, it does record the moments.
Yes, definitely.
More perhaps than a photograph does.
Yes. Yeah, it records your own personal feelings, doesn't it? Whereas a photo just records the landscape, I guess. You should talk to Andrew Anderson. His book, Ritual Writing, is so inspiring.
Yes. Fantastic author.
Yes.
We love Andrew.
Yeah.
And his magic cats.
Yeah.
So looking at the word pilgrimage again, is there a difference between a journey and a pilgrimage?
I think
just semantics?
They can kind of be... You usually get a journey and a pilgrimage, and sometimes you might get a pilgrimage and a journey. A journey doesn't usually have a final destination, or it might not. I mean, sometimes it does. But the intent of a pilgrimage is to go somewhere for a reason. For example, if you went to Iona, you might want to spend time meditating on a beach, or you might want to go and visit the abbey. Whereas if you're going on a journey, say, I wanted to go to Stonehenge tomorrow just to look around the stones, although it would be quite spiritual. That's not the purpose of going there. It might be to show friends around, or it might be because I've got a pass, or, there are lots of reasons that we go on journeys, but although they can be quite spiritual, they're not quite the same, I don't think, as a pilgrimage. A pilgrimage is more specific.
Something as well that I picked up on, you mentioned labyrinths and mazes. How does that fit into the pilgrimage category?
Well, interestingly, I was talking to Ima Burke, who's the chosen chief of Obod, who I interviewed in my book. And she's got a labyrinth in her garden, which I thought was really interesting.
Oh, how cool is that?
She said that
every garden should have one.
Well, she said that she often walks in the labyrinth to help her focus her mind. And she considered it a kind of mini pilgrimage. And that's why you find so many in churches, because it was for people who couldn't go to the Crusades and everything. So they could go and walk around in silence around a labyrinth in the church. And they were almost going on a mini pilgrimage in a way, which I think is really interesting.
Okay, that makes sense. I was never sure why. But there's a lot of churches, old churches, that have them in their grounds. I was never sure what the purpose of them was for, particularly linked to the church.
I've got a mini
that
one.
Makes
it's
sense.
Probably about that big, that I keep by my bed, which I use as a meditation tool, which is not quite the same thing, but I might run my finger along it with my eyes closed, because you don't know where you're going to end. So it's kind of working in the pilgrimage way, where you're going to a foreign place and you don't know what's going to happen, which I think is quite powerful, really.
Oh yeah, if anybody gets the chance to walk one, go for it. It is, it's weird, isn't it? It is literally lines drawn on the ground, but it is a very spiritual thing to do. But I'd never thought of it as a pilgrimage, but that makes sense. You can find insight, direction.
Yes.
You can release.
And
all by following.
The same with mazes, but mazes have got the added advantage of you don't know where you're going, do you, to get to the middle. So that is, I suppose, in a way, quite like a pilgrimage, because, you're going in a place you've never been before. You're visiting places you don't know. So it's a bit like that. You have to make sure you take the right turn, and if you take the wrong turn, you have to come back. It's very much like a journey and a pilgrimage.
There's that element of the unknown with that, isn't there? And you don't have to go too far for those either. Doesn't require a plane ticket normally. Any hints and tips from you to make a pilgrimage successful? What should people, are there any guidelines to make it happen successfully?
I think the best thing you can do is spend time researching the place you want to go to. Especially if you're unsure or you're not quite sure, spend time, certainly meditate, journey. I've got several in my book that you could follow to find the place that you want to go to. If you know the place, then do lots of research about the place so you understand it, so you've got a kind of knowledge of it before you arrive there. And make sure you go at the right time that's right for you. So, for example, physically, you might need to do some exercise before you go to walking, for example, or you might not want to go in the middle of winter if it's a very cold place and it gets very snowy. And it needs to be right for you spiritually, I think, to go on a pilgrimage. People generally, people who generally go on pilgrimage are pulled to pilgrimage at certain times in their life, I found. So just make sure you're right and it's right for you and you're happy with what you're doing. And it will come to you if it's meant to be, definitely.
I think most of us folk on the spiritual path, we learn to trust our intuition, don't we? And if your intuition is that calls you normally, isn't it? I think most of us are called to certain places, sometimes again and again. Can you do a pilgrimage again to the same place? Does that work?
I've been to Iona more than once.
Right.
I'm hoping to go there again eventually, but not yet. But yeah, I mean, sometimes my friend, for example, Scott, who's in the book, he's just done a pilgrimage along St Cuthbert's, which goes from Montrose in Scotland to Lindisfarne. And I know that he's done it before, but this time he walked it, which he hadn't done before. So sometimes it's nice to do things in different ways. So perhaps you might walk it where you hadn't walked it before. Yeah, you get a different perspective. And also when you return to a place, it's familiar, but you might find aspects of it that you didn't see before, which builds on your own spirituality.
But nature changes, doesn't it? Nature evolves, different seasons as well.
Mm.
What's been your favourite pilgrimage so far then, your favourite personal one?
I don't know if I've got a favourite one. I like all the places I go. Probably the most powerful pilgrimage I've done I did last year, which was the established route of St Olav's in Norway, which is the most northerly pilgrimage, which it runs from between Norway and Sweden. I mean, I didn't do the whole route, which is about 168 miles. So I did 2 chunks of it. It led me to a place that is probably the most remote place I've ever been in my life. And it affected me so profoundly that I can't even put it into words now, how it affected me. The second part, I worked near the Nidaros Cathedral in Trondheim, which is the end part. And after that, I walked in the Arctic Circle past Buda in Norway. And I had a really powerful spiritual experience up there, which has changed me immensely and challenged me in my views on many things. But I still haven't fully absorbed how it's changed me yet. That's how profound it was. Recently, I returned from Shetland, where I walked to the furthest point north in the UK, which was amazing because Shetland is such a place of extremes, and a place I really like that about places. I like to go to places that are powerful in their elemental nature. And I really want to go back there one day.
These all sound like quite remote places.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm guessing that works for you. Might not work for everybody. But the landscapes, I would imagine, were amazing.
Yeah.
Particularly Norway, that area.
Yeah.
Just the land and the shape of the land.
Yes, definitely. It's very, it's very mountainous, very remote. You're lucky if you've got a phone, if you can get a signal in some places, so you are really cut off. If you fall in the sea from the top of one of the mountains, that's it, really. You've had it.
Not the best side of it, but nice to be remote.
just be careful.
Have you got any special pilgrimages planned for the future? Are there ones that you've planned, or are there ones that you would really, really love to do that are perhaps a bit further out of reach?
Well, next year I'm going back to Norway to do some more walking, but it's not fully planned out yet. We've got other things we're going to do in Norway as well. And eventually, one day, I'd like to go to Svalbard, which is the very top of, more or less the top of the world, and maybe walk there. I'm not sure how feasible it is to walk up there, but I think it would be pretty amazing to go there. But we'll see. Now, the path will lead me where it leads me.
Yeah, absolutely. Any places that you've been to that you perhaps didn't connect with so much?
Well, without being critical, I don't connect. When I was a child, I used to go to Stonehenge a lot. This is before it had barriers around it and you could just run up to it. And
yeah, me too.
I love your Stonehenge
in the middle.
And today I can't connect with it because it's too remote and there's too many people and
I'm with you.
You're too separate from it. It's become so clinical that I can't connect there anymore. So I just find it quite sad to visit it, to be honest.
No, I absolutely with you. I have been in the centre, in recent years for particular things.
Yeah.
I think it's lost a lot of the magic because of all of the, I want to say commercialism. I think perhaps it does. I understand that it has to be looked after, but yeah, it doesn't do it for me. Sorry, Stonehenge.
I think the problem is a lot of cultural organisations are going the same way, which I think is quite sad. Certainly recently when I was up in Orkney, you can't walk around the Ring of Brodgar anymore, not in the inner circle. You have to go on the outer circle because they're trying to protect it. And I think, it's all very well, but you're losing the magic that the inner circle creates. If you want to stand in the middle of a stone circle, that is the stone circle to stand in the middle of. It's incredible. And you just can't do it anymore.
Probably a difficult one, isn't it? I understand why they Stonehenge. I understand why they keep it roped off, because it gets damaged.
Yeah.
But it means that you do lose a big part of that energy, don't you?
Yeah, I think it could be managed a lot better than it is, but that's just my opinion.
No, I do totally. I haven't been to Stonehenge for a few years because it doesn't. Yeah. You need to be able to connect, don't you? You need to be able to touch those stones, don't you? We do. The world does have an awful lot of magical places.
That's true.
Still to visit for sure. Fantastic. Anything planned for the future, project-wise, or anything you're up to?
I've just handed in my next manuscript, as you know. It's a book about heathenry, which is my spiritual path. I've also got a ghost story coming out at Christmas in a journal called The Silent Companion, which I'm really excited about because I've never had fiction published before, so it's great.
Fiction's hard.
It's really hard to get into it
for writing fiction.
I'm writing my third book at the moment, and after that I'm going to have a break.
It's addictive. It's addictive. If people go on pilgrimages, then we'd love for them to share, I'm sure.
Yes, definitely. I'd love to hear from people who go on pilgrimages in places I haven't been, for example, Australia or maybe America as well. That would be amazing. I'd love to hear from people.
Yeah, brilliant. There's the whole world at our doorstep. So, thank you so much for joining us, dear.
Well, thank you for having me. And go and buy the book.
Get out and get pilgrimaging. Yes, get out and buy the book and then go on your pilgrimage. Brilliant. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Well, thank you for making it nice and easy for me.
And thank you to everyone watching and listening. Do join us again next time on the Pagan Portal Podcast.
You have been listening to the Pagan Portal Podcast, a Moonbooks Publishing production. For more information, please visit our website.